All right. And I'm Rachel Ann Goodman. This is K-Squid Community Radio, and I'm joined by Justin Cummings. He is 3rd District Supervisor for the County of Santa Cruz. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming by. So, offshore drilling again? I mean, this feels like a nightmare that just won't go away.
Yeah, I mean, you think that our rights are protected, our environment's protected, and, with this administration, it seems like they're just pushing the buck on anything and everything that they can do and just, leaving it up to the courts to decide most of the time. And so, in the Unleashing America Energy's executive order and Unleashing America's Mineral Resources executive order, it was pretty clear that they were going to be coming after, trying to drill and mine in a lot of our protected spaces. So really, put us on the spot of we got to be ready to do something.
So is there a specific threat that this has unleashed? I know you said it's in the courts, but what's our game plan here on the Central Coast or anywhere in California?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's not anything specifically in the courts yet because nothing's been done, but they have been proposing reopening the offshore oil and gas leases for oil and gas exploration, and now there's a proposal for deep seabed mining, which wasn't something in the past that we were really worried about, but now, with the new technologies, and there's some proposals, I think, America Samoa and some of the other islands in the Pacific where they're actually moving quickly to start deep seabed mining that has really put us on edge with, we got to do something.
So for people who don't know what seabed mining does to the environment, can you give us a little snapshot of its damaging effects on life?
Yes. So, for example, there's certain types of underwater geological structures that, because of their orientation and because of the types of waters that they're in, metals can plate to them. And so as a result, if we want to go and extract those metals, I mean, they have to send down equipment that more or less will grind up those structures to extract those metals and minerals. And so you can just imagine what that will do to, the organisms that may live on those geologic structures, what it'll do to the turbidity of the water flow, nutrient cycling, and how that can be so disruptive to ecosystems.
We're already hearing of impacts of climate change already on ocean ecosystems where certain species are just not going to be able to live in an ocean that hot. I read an article today about dolphins just dying in lakes in the Amazon because they're just too hot. They're like 104 degrees. So we have that going on. This seems like just another death knell for the oceans unless we stop it. Are we looking at a way to stop it just off the coast of our continent, or is it, an effort to stop it worldwide from many countries? What do you know about that?
Well, right now, I mean, and what's interesting is that when they proposed this, offshore leases for the entire continental U.S., Lindsey Graham and a number of the Republicans, Rick Scott, they've all stood up and said, not on the East Coast. Don't do it on the East Coast. And as a result, they're going in and changing their plans for the Outer Continental Shelf leasing program. But they left at this point California, Oregon, Washington, in Eastern Gulf, and maybe a few other places, Alaska. So, really what's been happening right now is that through my office, turns out back in 1980, there was a group that was established of local governments, counties, that pushed back against these proposals to lease offshore throughout the state of California. And after learning about this, because there has been at least one comment period already regarding offshore oil, and we've submitted comments, learning about this effort in the 80s, we decided, well, hey, let's do it again. And so back in June, our office put an item on the board's agenda. We've now relaunched this program, and so I've been spending a lot of time reaching out to all the counties up and down the state to get support on trying to reignite this effort. And we've rehired a man by the name of Richard Charter, who kind of led the charge as kind of the director of the program back in the 80s and early 90s, and who was really instrumental in not only helping us stop offshore leasing, but also establishing many of the national marine sanctuaries.
Just like the efforts to just attack certain states that vote Democratic, do you think there's political intent behind just focusing on these Pacific waters?
Well, I think that, one of the things about this administration is that they've been pretty reckless in terms of the way they've been impacting folks. And so when they come out and say, we're going to just, drill off all the coasts, and then the Republican states say, hey, wait a minute, not here. And they now backtrack on those states. It's now pretty clear that this is an attack, on Democratic states and also on waters where they think that they can actually find oil and natural gas and no one's going to push back against them, or they don't really care.
Well, they haven't found out about poking the bear and what that people feel very strongly here about their ocean environment. It's a major source of the economies of all these states that you're talking about. So it's not going to go without a fight. I guess the big question is, can tying it up in the courts long enough, win this fight?
It's possible if we get to that point. I think one of the things we're really focused on is that this is really a nonpartisan issue, right? I mean, and when we think really deeply about it, there are coastal property owners up and down the state of California who aren't necessarily Democrats. And this would have impacts on them too. And so as we're building this coalition, we're really trying to build it in the way that is not partisan, and also bringing in interests that maybe historically wouldn't have been involved. So, for example, really trying to get the real estate industry to understand what's the impact going to be on coastal property values, and really talking to, for example, fishermen who this will have potential significant impacts on fisheries. So really thinking about the coastal economy broadly and what will be impacted in addition to the ecological impacts, because there's one thing that really motivates Trump, it's money. And if we're going to show that there's an impact on different industries, it could be something that's a little bit more of a motivator for them to back off.
The energy policy of the Trump administration, though, is to drill, baby, drill, and to stop all the projects that were funded under the Inflation Reduction Act and the infrastructure bill, which had millions and millions of dollars for offshore wind, for solar, for mitigation projects that would have helped species that are going to be impacted by climate change. And it's like, if you really wanted to help the energy become independent in the United States, you'd have all of the above and get off of oil. But at least you wouldn't be putting any off the table, because that they're now more affordable than petrochemicals and oil in general. Solar energy is now surpassed it in terms of economy. So it is very strange, but it's not so strange if you look at who's funding his campaign. It's really about, he's more beholden to them for money than he is to the public's health or the future of the country, or even being energy independent. It doesn't make sense, but here we are again. So there was a press conference. People like Fred Keeley, the mayor, and Dan Hafley, the former director of Save Our Shores, was there. He kind of engineered some of the previous fights against oil drilling off the coast of California. What was the main message you wanted to send with that press conference, which I'm sorry I wasn't able to be at?
Yeah, I think the main message we were trying to send is that we see what's happening and we're going to put up a fight. And I think through the efforts that Save Our Shores are engaging in, their role really is not so much the offshore but the onshore, because one of the ways that local jurisdictions can fight back is that you may be able to extract the oil out in the waters, but it's got to go somewhere. And so if there's no facility onshore where that oil can be pumped to or delivered to by barge, then that makes the whole operation that much more expensive. Because if you have to ship the oil to Oregon or somewhere in Southern California, that means that that's an added cost. And when you think about the economics of it, it's like, does this even make sense for us to do if it's not going to be financially feasible or viable for us to get this on shore and refine it? And I think that's Save Our Shores is really on top of trying to look at our local jurisdictions and communicate up and down the coast to see where can different jurisdictions make changes to their ordinances. And again, since now deep seabed mining, which hasn't been incorporated into any of the local ordinances, like making sure we can have all of our ordinances updated. So it's like, even if you try to take it from like the federal waters, you can't bring it onto our shores.
So the fact that we have all these marine sanctuaries, does that protect us from this sort of seabed mining? Is that on? It wasn't even being done when they wrote that law, right?
Yeah, once upon a time, prior to the Trump administration, the national marine sanctuaries would have protected us, and now it's just not clear, right? Because there's so many things that we think we were protected under the Constitution and under the various laws that we have. That
like due process.
Due process, yeah. They're just being bypassed. And
not being grabbed off the street because you're driving in your car.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, but just because those things are in court, they are going all into court because they're unconstitutional, means it's just uncertain, right? But so you have to prepare for something that may or may not happen. A lot of energy being, I mean, not oil energy, but mental energy, time being spent preparing for something that may or may not happen. So,
right, and that's what we're doing, unfortunately, because we don't know. And so when they have comment periods on the leasing programs, we have to comment. And because we have to build a record of opposition in case they start moving forward with selling the leases, at which point in time we'd probably move forward with, collectively trying to file lawsuits. And I think that by having this local government group that spans the entire coast, it really, allows us all to be together on these lawsuits. So it's not just, little Capitola going by themselves. It's like, all the counties and hopefully cities, along the coast of California banding together.
And also Oregon and Washington?
We're just focused right now on California. There are groups that are communicating, and we've rehired Richard Charter, and he's been on calls with folks in Oregon and Washington, but it's been hard enough to get California counties on board. And a lot of it's just, different priorities, people actually realizing, oh, this is a big thing, and really trying to bring everybody together. And so far, we've gotten Humboldt, Sonoma. It's going to be on Monterey's agenda for consideration. It's going to be on Mendocino's if they haven't already approved, San Mateo. I think I might have mentioned Marin County.
And what is it they're approving? I'm sorry.
They're approving joining this coalition of counties, and we're going to start reaching out to other cities. Right. City of Santa Cruz is going to be on their next agenda, I believe. Been talking to Santa Barbara. We're starting to reach out to more of the cities, but really trying to get the counties first, since we're kind of the bigger geographic areas, and then getting the cities on board so that we can speak with one united voice.
Doesn't the Coastal Act also come in here somewhere?
Yes, and we've, as I've been mentioning before, we've just been seeing so much, disregard for laws and for, state laws, and I think the Coastal Act does play a huge role in this.
So much for states' rights, which the one party kept harping on forever, and now they're going to just come in and ignore the Californians' will.
Right. Yes. I mean, and if we look at Santa Barbara and what happened with Sable, which now, luckily, there's some pushback from Santa Barbara County, but, when I was on the Coastal Commission earlier this year, Sable had just kind of bypassed the state regulations and started rebuilding their pipeline for one of their platforms and doing work offshore to their platforms, and more or less we're just, I think at that time issued an $18 million fine against Sable, and we said, if you come in and get the permits, we can reduce it, but you are in violation, and they just blew us off.
They didn't even pay the fine?
They haven't paid the fine. So
the age of impunity, I call it, which is do it anyway, and then hope you don't get caught, and if you do, maybe pay the fine or maybe not, which just feels like if the wealthier corporations don't have to do anything legal, we're all at a disadvantage because individuals, even counties, don't have the same clout with the government that wealthy corporate holders, of oil companies, the oligarchs have. Right. It's very frustrating, but I'm glad you're heading this up. And how can constituents, the average person who lives on the coast who does not want to see oil derricks off the coast, what do we do? What can we do? Do we speak out at meetings or what?
Yeah, we're, I think, for jurisdictions that haven't gotten on board yet, I think encouraging their cities and counties to join the coalition. We're going to be launching a website in the next week or so called savemycoast.org, and that will be a location for people to kind of see what's going on. And then when if and when the comment periods come up for leasing, it's a location where we'll have links so people can click on the comment section. It'll take them to the federal website where they can put their comments of opposition in. And then that way, again, we're building a record so that if it comes time for a lawsuit, we'll be ready, and we will voice our opposition, and hopefully we can, hope the courts rule in our favor.
And there is such thing as running out the clock on this administration, which people are counting down the weeks at this point. Well, let's switch gears in the 10 minutes we have left to talk about some other issues that are pressing for Santa Cruz County residents. I think it's next week I'm going to be interviewing the Commissioner Lara's deputy, and also someone from the Watchdog group, so about the New York Times expose about insurance. So I'm sure that's something you read.
I was not aware of it, actually. So
okay,
I'm
well,
read
it, and read that. It's kind of about loopholes in making people whole after they file claims. So we'll talk about that next week. But I did want to talk about the kind of food crisis we're going through with so many SNAP recipients. And I know this is a federal issue and not under your jurisdiction, but your constituents, many of them, rely on SNAP for their basic food needs. What do you know is happening as far as locally trying to shore up some of that? I know the supervisors voted on some money. Of course, nobody can replace the billions that the federal government is supposed to be giving. According to a judge, they're supposed to give full benefits back, but that might take a while. So there's like this interim period that is uncertain again.
Yeah, and today was another one of these days where the pendulum just swung back and forth all day long, and where I should say actually this week, coming into this week, judge's order came down, replace all the benefits. Then they said, we'll replace half. And then on Tuesday, actually during our meeting, they said, we're not going to replace any until after the shutdown's over. Then after the election on Tuesday, now today they said, we'll give back half. And I think there was someone who said they may have already said they're going to give back full. So it's such a huge moving target that really, stresses a lot of folks, especially in county and state government, out when we're trying to figure out how are we going to maintain our services, especially our safety net services. And so on Tuesday of this week, the board did approve allocating $500,000 to Second Harvest Food Bank. And as the food bank, we kind of see them as that stopgap of being able to, purchase food, package it, get it to distribution sites so that, and, letting people know where those sites are so that they can, at least get some food, in the interim. We also have shared resources on the county's website about food pantries and where people can go locally. And I think one of the biggest things that we're hoping is that people will donate to Second Harvest Food Bank, Meals on Wheels, Gray Bears, these, nonprofits that provide meals to people in our community. And then also encourage people to go volunteer, because even when the food comes in, it still needs to be packaged and sorted so that it can go out for distribution and people to, take it out. And so a lot of those efforts are gearing up. Also with food donations. I mean, we know generally during the holidays there are food drives. And so really trying to help support those because, the need is definitely there. And, we have to get creative in terms of how we can provide that, because the county can't go and programs people's EBT cards. And even if we were to be able to do that, there's been some talk that the Trump administration is going to take the machines offline, so you can't even utilize the machines for EBT. And so it's been, again, really confusing to understand how this is all playing out. But what we can do as a county and what we can do as cities is we can support our local food banks and our local food pantries to the greatest extent possible. And for restaurants, if they're willing to give EBT card holders free food or free meals, I mean, there's all sorts of little things that we're going to have to creative to do, as we did during COVID, to make sure that we can keep people fed.
Yeah, there's quite a few creative ideas. I know some restaurants have put up food pantries in their lobby. I also have heard about people, those little libraries that people have in neighborhoods that are free. They're stocking those with food. So people, non-perishable, of course. People are getting creative, but it's nothing like what the federal government is supposed to do, which is make sure people don't go hungry. So I did hear, the last thing I heard today was that a judge said because it was politicized in a post by Trump, that shows them in contempt of court, and now they have to do full benefits now. So in a way, and I also heard that it's easier for them to give full benefits technically because programming everybody for half could take weeks.
Right.
So in a way, it's a better solution. Of course it is. Who wants to eat half of what's already not enough? So we'll see what happens there. We have just a few more minutes. We could talk about other things. What else is up that you'd like to bring up in the short time we have? And thank you for coming in. I know you have a very busy schedule as a supervisor, so I appreciate your time.
Yeah, I think right now we're really also, in addition to food resources as it relates to homelessness, we're not going to have funds coming in from the state. We just learned that Housing Matters is not going to be providing day services anymore. So we're really trying to figure out how we can help, support those communities as well, around hygiene for showers, making sure people can get their benefits through the mail that they would normally receive, and really trying to ensure that people are going to remain housed, because Section 8 is another piece of this puzzle from the federal side where, they're considering to cut a lot of those benefits as well. So in addition to food, in addition to healthcare, we've got this housing piece where we're really struggling to try to figure out what's happening on that end, because for all the gains that we've made at getting people housed, if the federal government then cuts those benefits off as well and people can't make their payments for housing, then we're going to see more people going on the street. And then that's going to, make this problem even more complicated. So
certainly doesn't get fixed when the National Guard comes in and just moves people or treats them like criminals. That's not the answer.
Right.
Putting them in detention because they're poor. I mean, it does remind me of another era where it was the Gilded Age or the Great Depression. But this one's self-inflicted. Like, it didn't have to happen. We were doing just fine, and now they're talking about cutting disability from like 850,000 people will get thrown off of it because of rule changes. I don't know where it stops, but I think people are finally realizing they did not get the rosy America they thought they were getting when they voted for Trump. Turns out it's more of a Ebenezer Scrooge situation. And people paid into these funds. It's not like they are taking from anybody. They've already paid ahead on a lot of these funds that are being withheld. So we'll see. And it really does put a lot of pressure on you guys as the county supervisors. It's too bad we can't just keep our federal tax dollars and give them to our local officials to spend.
Yeah. And, as the fifth largest economy, it's like we'd be set.
Yeah.
And a lot of these states that voted for this would really be hurting. But I think that given that they're inflicting the pain on everyone, I think that some of the people who thought, again, that this was a good idea are actually going to be realizing that it's not.
I don't think they actually voted to cut everything
Right.
from the government and give it all to rich people. Like,
Right.
if that had been how it was presented, they would never have voted yes. But they were convinced that their egg prices would go down.
Right.
So there we are. So we've got homelessness. Does Measure C passing change anything for the county's approach to housing or anything?
Measure C was a citywide measure.
Okay.
So that's just funding that's going to be coming into the city. And part of that is because back in 2018, I think when I first ran for city council, Measure H was on the ballot, and that was a countywide parcel tax for affordable housing. And although that failed, the one place where it would have passed was in the city. Mm-hmm. So that's why the city decided to go for its own measure, and it passed, obviously.
But the city is within your district anyway.
That's true.
So
yeah. Yep.
Piece of it might be changing and the other people not so much. So I'm from Bonnie Doon. I have one more Bonnie Doon question in a couple minutes we have left. There's a new sheriff's center being put in Davenport. Mm-hmm. Thinking there is that it'll serve people better on the North Coast, or give them tickets when they speed on Highway 1. What's the thinking?
Yeah, well, as many folks know, with the rail trail going in the North Coast, which is going to bring a lot of visitation, we've got the Catoni Coast Dairies Monument that's now open. We have all the visitation from the internet, with everybody now learning where all these kind of pocket beaches have been that were not as visited in the past, but now are being heavily utilized and visited. We really have been hearing from folks the concern around public safety, and we know that in the summer there has been an increase in car break-ins, and so by having a sheriff's substation up there, it just gives them more of an ability to be able to go on patrol, process paperwork, and also we see it more as a public safety center. So parks will be there. We're reaching out to BLM to have some folks there, but really see it as a place where people can come in and file their complaints and be a little bit more visible.
Well, great. Well, thank you again for coming in, Justin. Justin Cummings, 3rd District Supervisor for the County of Santa Cruz. Thanks for bringing your knowledge and wisdom and thoughtfulness into the studio tonight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm Rachel Ann Goodman. It's been Talk of the Bay. Coming up next, it's first person singular, and that's going to be followed by Don Motica with Ask Dr. Don. Stay tuned.